Joining me next is Robert Lemon from seven&nine. We're going to talk about architecture. Hi, good morning, Robert.
Good morning, Peter. How are you?
What a beautiful day. June is finally here and we're enjoying some summer weather. Let's get right into it. Shim and Sutcliffe designed your property. So tell us the background on the tower and some history.
Well, there's two buildings here on Coburg Street. I'm looking out right now at the Lake Victoria right across the street. So I'm in what used to be the Rundle's restaurant space, and I bought both properties in 2019, pre-COVID. And because I was always in love with the Tower House, I'd stayed there many times coming to Stratford from Vancouver almost every year. And for the last decade or so, stayed at the Tower House when Jim Morris had it available for customers of Rundle's. And so when it came on the market, I was interested. And as a way to kind of in my retirement as an architect, thought that coming to Stratford would be a good place to do that. And so it ended up, I bought both properties and then converted Rundle's into basically my home and two guest suites that are part of the seven&nine. They're at seven&nine Coburg. So that's why it's called seven&nine. And it's a fairly went through a long process of deciding the name, but it came up with as simple as possible, seven&nine. So that's how it came about. And took all the renovations here at the Rundle's building took place during COVID, and so I had watching it from afar from Vancouver was a bit nerve-wracking, but I had very good contractor working very diligently on doing a phenomenal job of the renovation. And I kept the spirit of what Shim and Sutcliffe had done in the new work that I've added to the Rundle's building to convert it from a restaurant and a commercial kitchen into a home. And I've been very happy with the results.
Amazing. You're in the Michelin Guide. Tell us about that experience.
Well, one of the listing it's an inn. Seven&nine is an inn, and there's only four rooms. Well, the Tower House is one whole. You can rent the whole thing, two bedrooms, and then two other rooms here. And I was interested in the Tablet hotels, and I've stayed. Tablet Hotels is based in New York, but they were acquired by the Michelin Guide a few years ago. So it happens that I'm listed with Tablet and then incorporated into the Michelin Guide, and it's a real bonus to have that connection because it appeals to people that are have design sense, culturally, cultural tourists, I guess, that are the people that like to come and stay here in Stratford for both the theater, the music, and the food offerings that Stratford has. So I think it's a good connection. It's the only tablet, only Michelin property in Stratford, and quite happy to have that distinction.
Yeah, absolutely. Kudos to you. How do you balance? I know you're a heritage consultant as an architecture, arch, as an architect, excuse me. How do you balance architecture modern with heritage?
Well, in my almost over 40 years in Vancouver, I've always had an interest in the architecture, the heritage, I guess, of the 20th century. And so my master's thesis was on how modern buildings fit in historic settings and historic contexts. And so I did quite a bit of research on that when I was at the University of York, the one in England, and traveled around England and Denmark looking at works of quite celebrated works of modern architecture that fit in their historic settings, whether it's the Oxford campus, downtown Copenhagen. And so that what I was interested in here that's why I was interested in the Tower House is because it is a modern building, clearly modern, but in the context of downtown Stratford in the historic area. And people come and I see them all the time walking by and looking up at the Tower House, and they're kind of like surprised that there's something so distinctly modern. It's very tall and skinny, and that's why it's only 16 feet wide, but it's about 45 feet high. So it fits onto the very narrow lot that was carved out of the what had been the Rundle's restaurant property. So I think it's important to expand and examine how modern buildings from our time can fit in a historic setting so that we're not copying, we're not having duplicates, we're not having clones of old buildings that say nothing about the era that we are in. And that's what this building, particularly the Tower House, really does. And if you see pictures of it, it's beside the York apartment building, which is late 20s, I'd say. They're very different buildings, but there's something to do with the scale and the height. of the tower house that responds to the building next door when two shades of brick. And the shading of the coloring of tower house has a kind of mimics that in a very modern way. And that's what I think is very clever work that Shim Sutcliffe do. It's called, if you're into the semantics of it, it's called critical regionalism, where they look at a strain of modern Canadian architecture that responds to its context and its time, its place.
Is there any
So I
other famous
think
buildings
being
in
involved in
Stratford?
heritage and modern buildings is it's a logical fit.
Right. And then in summary, any other famous buildings in Stratford Shim and Sutcliffe would have been involved in?
No, but we did have, I think the Meehan Forum last year had the Stratford Festival had a talk about modern architecture in Stratford, and the other clearly modern building is the Tom Patterson Theater, and so they're kind of two pieces of a different thread of modern architecture, but both represent very progressive thinking about architecture in Stratford. There are lots of other interesting buildings in Stratford that, for example, a couple of bank buildings, which are very unusual for a small Canadian city to have the CIBC Bank on Downey Street, 1970s. Very interesting building that fits in the dog leg of where Downey Street curves around by City Hall, and it uses brick and it uses very interesting detailing that is respectful of its location in the historic downtown Stratford.
Well, Robert, thank you very much for shedding light on the architecture in Stratford. Appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.